Welcome back, and I do hope as ever you and your family are keeping well. So what I want to look at today is the energy that you get from the food that you eat. And we're going to look at calories, or more importantly, because energy is measured in joules, we're going to look at the energy that you need to live and do all the things you do over a day in kilojoules, and how much of that energy is in different types of food. So before we look at some specific food items that you would eat and get your energy from, I want to remind you very quickly about energy and how it's measured. So energy, if you remember, is measured in joules. And 1 joule is a very small amount of energy. It's about the same amount of energy that you give to an apple when you lift it up by about a metre. So if you were to pick an apple up off the floor and put it on the desk, you've given it about 1 joule of gravitational energy. Okay, and it's a very small amount. Now, you run around and you breathe and you do all the active things that you do in a day. So you're going to need to get from your food rather more than 1 joule of energy. In fact, the joule is so small, we're going to measure the energy that you need in kilojoules, in thousands of joules. And an average teenager who's growing and is really active needs about 10,000 kilojoules a day. So 10,000 joules. So that's about 10 million joules a day just to do all the things that you do, as long as you're active, of course. Now, it's really confusing, this, because most people think of the energy in food when they eat it as being in calories. And that's a very confusing and old-fashioned unit. So I'll mention calories in a minute briefly, but as scientists, as physicists, we have to get away from calories and we have to think in the correct units in joules, or thousands of joules, in kilojoules. So I've brought in a few things from home to discuss here, and I would do that if we were in class as well. So we've still got a supply of pasta at home, even though the supermarkets have completely run out at this time. And if you look on the back of the packet of pasta, there's a big table of numbers. And one of the numbers on here is measured in calories. It's really confusing, and I kind of don't want to go into calories, because quite often when people say you need a certain number of calories, they actually mean you need a certain number of kilocalories. So it's old-fashioned, and the maths gets really confused with that. So instead, we're going to do everything correctly in joules or kilojoules, and the labelling on the back is definitely correct when it comes to that. Now, when you look at chocolate, okay, there's also on the back of that a table, and it tells you how much energy's in the chocolate. So what I want to do is I want to have a look at these tables on the back of the items and explain how you can work out from them how much energy is in the food that you eat. So I'm going to go up to the board in a minute and we'll look at things a little bit more closely. Okay, so now let's have a look at the energy that you get from food. So just remember that you guys all need energy to do things. That's like run around and do all the sports, and even just breathe and stuff like that. Okay, and there's really only one place you get this energy from. So you don't get it from sleeping. Oh, I need more energy, I think I'll sleep. You get it from food. So this energy comes from food, the food that you eat. Okay, now I think you're all pretty aware that if you get energy from food and it goes into you, you use that up with all the breathing and running around and shouting and things you do. But of course, if you don't have an active lifestyle and you still take in the same amount of energy, then it's going to be stored in you as fat, isn't it? Okay, so you need to have some understanding about how much energy you need for your daily activities and how much energy you take in Okay, and we said that energy is measured in joules. So measure all your energy in joules. Okay, now I know you're thinking, well, hang on, I'd like to do that in calories or something, but that's an old-fashioned measurement of energy, so we're going to do it in joules. The joules was too small, wasn't it? Okay, so we were going to measure in kilojoules, so 1 kilojoule, never miss that little K, is the same as 1,000 joules. And if I wrote something like 6.2 kilojoules, that would be 6,200 joules, and 0.8 kilojoules would be 800 joules. Okay, so don't miss out the kilo. Kilo means take this number, yeah, and multiply it by 1,000. So 0.8 times 1,000 is 800. Okay. We then said that a teenager, and other people as well, mountaineers and people who are very active, will need energy every day just to live and to do all their activities. And I'm making the number a little bit higher than it should be, but you guys used to be so active when you were here at school. So you need approximately, so a teenager needs approximately 10,000 kilojoules per day. Okay? 10,000 kilojoules per day. So 10 million joules per day to do the things that you want to do. Okay? And I did mention again that food packets seem to be obsessed with calories, and when you read about dieting and all those sorts of things, they talk about calories. Quite often they actually mean kilocalories, and I just want to forget that completely, okay? We're going to work in the right units today, so we're going to do all of our measurements in joules or kilojoules. So let's now look at the labels that are on the back of different items of food. And I'm going to get you to do some work on this a little bit later on. Now, if you think about it, if you buy a bar of chocolate, the bars can be different sizes, even though the chocolate's the same inside. So is it good to learn how much energy is in every different sized bar of similar chocolate? Or would it be easier just to know how much is in one portion that you should eat, or maybe just in 100 grams? Because if you know how much energy is in 100 grams, then if you buy a 200 gram bar, you know how much you've got. And if you buy a 400 gram bar, you know how much you've got. So we're going to look at what's on the back of these and how you guys can work out what the label means. Okay. Now, the label is always going to be the energy. You have to look carefully to find out where that is on the label. The energy that we're going to look at properly is always going to be in kilojoules. Okay, that's what physicists use the world over to measure energy. And what you should find on the back is the amount of energy in 100 grams of the material. Now, as far as I know, that's law. So even if this was a 50 gram bar of chocolate, it has to have on the back how much energy in kilojoules, so you can do some calculations for yourself and your diet, how much energy is in 100 grams. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to eat 100 grams of it. It just means that you've got a fixed number so you can make some comparisons. Okay? Sometimes it gives the energy per serving. Okay? Now, this is much more complicated. This is the recommended amount that you should eat in one go. Okay? So it varies for different things. because you won't eat the same amount of different materials. Okay, so some things that are very, very lightweight, or you might, like a portion of chips maybe, you might eat, the serving might be quite large, and for other things the serving might be quite small. Let's have a think about fish and chips. Okay, so your serving of chips might be quite heavy. Okay, so it might be a lot of grams, and your serving of ketchup, one serving, might be a very small amount, like you have in one of those little pots. But it's quite nice to know that if you eat one serving, so you don't have a double portion, how much energy is in one serving. And for example, okay, let's say 150 grams. So one of the packets I looked at said that one serving was 150 grams. So if I knew how much energy was in 100 grams, I could multiply by 1.5, so I know how much energy I'd eaten if I'd had one serving. The other thing, of course, is that these numbers are on the packet, never mind how big the packet is. Okay, so it could be a massive catering pack of pasta, or it could be a tiny little item. Okay, it will just have to list how much energy is in 100 grams of that material if you eat it, and how much energy is in 150 grams serving that you might have with a meal. Okay, so I'm going to put on the screen now a packet of risotto rice. It's quite posh, so you must wonder what my partner's been buying for our household. But what I'd like you to do, and you might have to pause the video to have a look, is I'd like you to look closely at how heavy the pack is. Okay, so can you find out how many grams the pack is? Yep. And you should see that it's a 500 gram pack, so it's a half kilo pack. Let's have a look at how much energy is in 100 grams of this. Remember, I think by law, they have to tell you how much energy you'd find in 100 grams. And if you look carefully at the table, you'll see that this rice has 495 kilojoules of energy in every 100 grams of the rice. But 100 grams is a bit of a small amount to eat for dinner. So if you were to eat one serving of this rice, how much energy would you have taken in? Well, you'll see that a serving is 180 grams, and you could either calculate it, 1.8 times the previous number for 100 grams, or they have to give it for a serving of 180 grams, you would take on board 891 kilojoules of energy. So, if you want to know how much energy you've taken in by eating one serving of rice, and you make sure that it's the right amount, then you know that you're on your way to your daily amount that you should have, your 10,000 kilojoules of energy. One serving of rice will have given you 891 kilojoules of energy. So you've done, you're on your way to sort of the amount that you should eat in a day, okay, just under a tenth of it. Just begs the question, you don't need to know this for GCSE, just begs the question, why is it a 500 gram box? Because if it's a 500 gram box and a serving is 180 grams, 180 doesn't go exactly into 500. It's only 2.8 servings. So maybe you could get just under 3 meals out of this box, but it does seem rather weird. So I'm going to put up on the screen now a packet of Doritos, and it's the back of the packet where it lists the amount of energy in the Dorito crisps. And what I'd like you to do is see if you can find, so can you find, okay, firstly, the energy per 100 grams. What's that value? Okay. And also, can you find the energy per serving? Okay, and it'd be nice for you to tell me how much a serving is. So, pause the video, have a good look at the Doritos label, and see if you can find out those three things. So, how much energy is in 100 grams if you were to eat 100 grams of Doritos? How much energy is in a serving of Doritos? And if you were to eat that serving, how much would you have eaten? How many grams of Doritos? So pause the video, write down what you think it is, and I'll give you the answer in a moment. So I hope you found your way around those labels now, and there's an awful lot of numbers on them. So the energy per 100 grams, if you've got that number, I'll come down here. Okay, you have to look fairly closely, but it was 2,074 kilojoules. Okay, so that was the energy per 100 grams. I hope you found out that one serving here was 30 grams. Okay, so if you've got a bag of Doritos and it's more than 30 grams, you perhaps shouldn't be eating the whole packet. Okay, and you can either calculate or you can look on the packet for the energy for your 30 gram serving, and I hope you found that one. That was 622 kilojoules. Okay, so I hope now you've got a really good understanding of how to find your way around these energy labels. So it's time for a little challenge with a box of cookies. So, time for the cookie challenge. So what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to put on the screen a picture of the back of these cookies to show you the label that lists the energy stored in them. Okay, and what I'd like you to do is to pause the video and have a good look at that label, and I'd like you to answer some little questions to check you fully understand what we're doing before we finish the lesson. Okay, so my first question is how many kilojoules per 100 grams are listed on the cookie box. Okay, that's the number they kind of have to give you. But then I'd like you to look at how many kilojoules per serving. Now, you'll be perhaps disappointed to hear that according to the box, the serving is one cookie. Okay, so a serving is one cookie. Kind of weird saying cookie, isn't it? Because we're not from America, but biscuit, one biscuit. But the box calls them cookies, so let's go with that. Okay. Now, I've got one final challenge for you. Remember that you need... Do you remember how much energy you need as an active youngster to grow and do all the things you want to do? Okay, well, you need about 10,000 kilojoules per day. Okay, let's be clear on what we mean by a day. A day is 24 hours. Okay, so it doesn't mean that when you go to bed, you have to eat another 10,000 kilojoules to keep you going through the night, as it were. Okay, but that's how much you need, and we're going to set ourselves a really silly task. Okay, let's assume that the only thing at the moment in your house, because everything's gone from the supermarket shelves, the only thing is cookies, and you got a big store of cookies. Okay, so how many would you have to eat? So how many cookies would you have to eat? you only got your daily dose of energy from cookies. And if you've answered the questions above here, you'll have the information you need to work out exactly how many cookies you'd need to eat if that's the only thing you ate. Okay, so pause the video now and work those things out, and I'll come back to you with the answers in a minute. Okay, let's see how you got on with the cookie challenge. So you should be really good at finding your way around food energy labels now. So how many kilojoules were there in 1,000 grams of these biscuits, cookies? Okay, you should have found it was 2,071 kilojoules of energy. That's quite a lot of energy if you think about it. Okay, but one serving is rather less than eating 100 grams of them. Okay, so for one serving, for one cookie, it was 528 kilojoules of energy you would get from eating that. And then my final question was, and it's a bit of a silly one, and don't do this, of course, it's not the way to get your energy. If you just ate cookies and nothing else for 24 hours, how many would you need to eat to give you your daily energy dose? Okay, well, you guys need approximately 10,000 kilojoules of energy per day, and there are 528 kilojoules of energy in each biscuit. So if you work that out, you would need 19 cookies. Okay, I can't remember how many was in the packet. I think it was about 8. So you'd have to buy a few more packets to get your daily energy dose. Okay, but it's worth saying here that that's physics. Okay, and there's a little bit of biology that comes in as well. You must remember to eat a balanced diet. Okay, so sitting on the couch, firstly, you're not burning off energy. Okay, so get up from your computers and actually do some stuff and run around. Okay, and secondly, if only cookies, just cookies, biscuits were the things that you ate during the day, okay, you wouldn't have a balanced diet. Okay, now that's not physics, that's the biology side, but you wouldn't be getting the vitamins and the fibre and all the other stuff you need. So you can do the physics maths, but you need to know a little bit more of biology to work out that you should eat a balanced or rounded diet where cookies might play a little bit of a part in it. So I do hope you found that video useful and you now have a really good understanding of how to work out how much energy is in the food that you eat. Remember, it's no good eating just chocolate to get the calories you need. You need a balanced diet. And, of course, if you eat a lot of calories, you've got to burn them off, you've got to use them off. So keep doing all the activities you do, try and do as much sport as you can, and you'll stay fit. Anyway, I'll be making another lesson soon, and I look forward to seeing you then.